Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar hosted by us here at NodeGraph. And today's topic is our brand new test module. The agenda for today is to give you an idea for you who doesn't know who we are. We're also going to have a brief discussion from why to what. We're going to do an introduction to testing and also a live demo. These webinars, we would like to attempt to keep them a little bit shorter. So the time frame for today would be approximately 10 to 15 minutes. But let's jump into NodeGraph and who we are. Here at NodeGraph, we believe that everyone has the right to understand their data. And meaning that is that it puts a lot of pressure and demand on us to be able to present this in both an easy way, but also in a quite complicated way, because data can be perceived on many different ways. So this is the basis, and this is what we strive for every day here at the office. Also, to have a discussion about data and data harvesting, we know for the fact, and hopefully everyone in this call knows, that data is a great motivator and a great drive force for organizations throughout the world. The amount of data is increasing rapidly, almost on a logarithmical scale. What we do here at NodeGraph is that we does not only look into the data, we also ask questions to the data. Those questions could be like, what files are used? Is the data up to date? How is certain fields calculated, certain KPIs calculated? Is there an easy way to document the entire solution? And bottom line also, where does the data come from? And that is why NodeGraph Your Data Starts Here actually what we do. Also looking into what is data. I mean, data can mean so many things to so many different people. What we found out during investigation and talking to our customers and also talking to our beloved partners is that data can mean both governance, structure, and processes. And those tend to be more from the IT and the BI teams. They tend to go towards those words. When asking decision makers, what is data for you and what does data mean for you? They talk a lot about insights, decisions, and trust. And also looking into the different types of stakeholders with a meta management tool or a meta tool, just as NodeGraph. I mean, we of course have the IT and the BI team, the decision makers, but we also do have the organization as a stakeholder. And just looking into the scope and what we offer and what we do here at NodeGraph is that we, so to say, we have two tracks. We have a lineage and a governance track, and we also have the testing or a unit and regression testing track. I mean, the test module is a little bit separate from the entire lineage and governance part, but it's also something that is very beneficial for the customers. To give you an idea of what you can do with the test module is that you initiate a test. And with tests, we mean that you can test QVDs, you can test data files, and you can actually test SANS apps as well. On top of that, you add a task. And those tasks could be if files exist, if they are reloaded, if certain fields exist. I mean, that could happen when you do a reload or if you do something in the script. You can also look into if field has the correct value. And in SANS, you can also look into the actual metric, if that has a correct value. Also, when you gather all this data and when you set up all these tests in your environment, the output that you will get is that you will, if a test fails, you will get a notification either via Slack or email. You can also analyze the test results in the Dependency Explorer. So it's a very easy way to be one step ahead when and if something fails. It's also something that can ensure a lot of trust in the organization, because when the data, if something happens with a reload and an application does not work, you will know that prior to when people are actually looking into the data. And you can give them notifications, and you can tell them, we have identified something wrong with this application. Please give us 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and the numbers will be correct. And in that way, you will elaborate, and you will also sort of say, give a better understanding of the data. Also, the values to look into. When I say focus on decisions, not data quality, that was sort of what I mentioned earlier. And that is, if you continuously test the data, if you know that you have something that happens on a SQL basis every month or every week or every half year or every quarter, you can add that actual mishappening as a test case. And then you can be sure that it won't happen again if you just do it with the test module. Also, what I mentioned is the reduced downtime for failed applications, because what you do is that if you have a failed test, you will get a notification. You will then enter, so to say, the dependency explorer, and then you will get all the lineage, both in a visual way to see if perhaps there is a missing link somewhere in the solution. And you can also actually go into the actual click script syntax to see what have we done with this certain field. Bottom line, the test module is all about empowering the trust and collaboration within the organization. This was the short part, just to give you an idea of what the test module is. And now my wonderful colleague, Oscar, will do an actual presentation of the tool. Oscar, are you ready?
Absolutely, Carl. Thank you for that introduction. I will start sharing my screen.
Perfect. The stage is yours.
Thank you. All right. So there we go. Now you will see my screen. And we start off at the NodeGraph landing page. If you have NodeGraph today, I'm sure you're familiar with it. Depending on which license you have, you will see different amount of modules. On my screen here, I have the Dependency Explorer, the Field Explorer, the Test Module, the Governance, and the GDPR module. But today we will focus on the Test module. So let's jump into that one. All right. So like Carl said, that our test module is about doing regression and unit testing of your Click solution. It works both for ClickView and ClickSense. And what we are trying to achieve is that we would like to make sure that we don't have a trust issue with your Click solution. What is very common today is that the users using a BI tool, not only Click, but any BI tool out there, they sort of start losing the trust in the BI system if the data is not correct. And for ClickView and ClickSense, what we have seen for most of our customers is that maybe we don't have the problem within the Click solution actually, but rather maybe in the source systems that are feeding your Click solution. So the way we see that you should work with the test module is two different sort of angles. One of them would be to make sure that the data going into your Click solution are up to date, and that's something you can automate by adding test cases to your extract layer in NodeGraph. The other way you can work with the test module is for the regression testing, because we know that ClickView and ClickSense are very flexible tools. You can develop really fast using those tools, but what we need to make sure is that the data that we have in our QVDs and QVWs and QVF is not corrupt after we have done new development. So therefore, you can use the NodeGraph test module for regression testing as well. So the way we set up the different test tasks and cases here in NodeGraph is like this. So we have a top level, which we call a test case. So that's a test case, right? And in my example here, I have two different test cases. I have a test of our ERP system, and I also have a test case called Verify Sales App. So with every test case, we can add test items. A test item could be a QVD file, it could be a QVW file, it could be a QVF, it could also be an Excel file. And depending on which type of file you are testing, different types of tests are available. But if we start looking into this test item here called orders QD, which is a QD that I have, reading data from my ERP system. So for this test item, I've added a couple of test tasks. You can see I have 4 of them here. First of all, I check if the QVD exists. It's sort of a basic test. Do we have that QVD? I can also check if it's up to date, meaning has it been reloaded. I can also check if it contains certain fields. Let's say you do a load star from a QVD, and for you it's very important that these 3 fields are always available in this QVD. So what you can do is you have NodeGraph test, okay, if the fields are actually in that QVD. And the last test we are doing is an aggregation test. And this is for us to check, and this goes sort of ties into the regression testing as well. What we are looking into here is that for the sales amount for 2017 Q3, that should never change, you know. That's way back in the past, and nothing we do today would change the sales result for 2017. So by having NodeGraph going automatically in and test this on a daily basis or weekly basis, we make sure that we haven't changed anything in the script, or if we haven't changed anything in our source systems that will make the data corrupt. So once we have created these test cases and test items and test tasks, we can schedule them, and there's actually a very flexible way of scheduling in NodeGraph. As you can see here, you can choose hourly, daily, weekly, or monthly. And once you've done that, NodeGraph will automatically run these tests. And like Carl said before as well, you will get notified either by email or posted directly to your Slack channel and get the information if you have a failed test or a good test. You also have the possibility within the Dependency Explorer to actually view the test results. So let's say you work with an operations department today. Maybe they would prefer to, just look at the test results by adding them here in the Dependency Explorer. So you see red, not so good, green, you're all good. You can continue focusing on something else, right? So I'm just going to hide that one and go back to the test module. So to wrap this up, this is a sort of a framework as we see it. It's a very good way for you to start automating your testing, and we believe that testing should be a natural part of your Qlik development. You should always have that. I mean, this is sort of the same approach like you should have to the documentation part. It should be natural when developing your Qlik solution to make sure that your data is correct and that the users can focusing on decisions instead of focusing if the data is correct or not. All right, Carl. So that was the demo. Right back to you.
Thank you very much, Oscar. Splendid presentation. So I will just wrap things up here. I will start sharing my screen again. So you will hopefully see it here. Yeah, it works perfectly. And just to give you an idea, if you think that this is very interesting, you of course can contact any one of our partners. Are you working with them today? I suggest that you will do that, or otherwise we can refer the contact further on within that. If you don't have a partner today that you work with that is listed here, you can contact us directly at sales@nodegraph.se. This was what we had planned to show for you today. We are super happy and super excited that we had all of you listening in, and hopefully we can start producing more and more webinars in the future. Also, I would like to mention that if you missed something, or if you thought that a specific part here was super interesting, this webinar will be available on our webpage as well as a pre-recorded webinar, or as a on-demand webinar, I have to say. Thanks so much, and have a really nice day. Bye-bye.